Hey everybody, it's Drexel here with Black Hollywood Lies Political Culture. We are recapping the first presidential debate from last night. We want to know your thoughts, so stay tuned.
You're tuned into Black Hollywood Live Political Culture.
Welcome to Black Hollywood Lies Political Culture. I'm your host, Drexel Heard. You are listening. We did steal MSNBC's theme song for tonight because it is our debate special.
Yay!
Welcome to the show. You can follow me on Twitter at Drexel Heard, on Instagram at Drexel Heard.
Hey guys, you can follow me on all social platforms at Hey It's Lay.
And we've got our new panelist joining us today. Please welcome my co-host from Trump versus Hillary on AfterBuzz TV, Miss Chelsea Galicia.
Hi there. So glad to be with you. And I'm at Chelsea Galicia on Twitter and Instagram.
Well, welcome. Thanks for coming out today. We're going to kick off today's show not talking about the debate first because we got a couple of things that happened last week. A few things before we get really into the debate from last night. So let's start with the Smithsonian Museum of African American Culture opening last week. President Obama christening that museum. What did you guys think of that?
So exciting.
And timely. I mean, a perfect bridge between like the history of this struggle and then now, because it's begun all over again to get the national spotlight, because thankfully we have cell phones and videos that are making the struggle more visible to everybody. So I thought it was really fascinating that it opened at this time in history, when soon enough, I think in that museum, we're going to have like cell phone footage of some of the more recent events.
I think that it was just, it was exciting, but then there was a sense of overwhelmment, like just going through the website and looking through the gallery and looking at all the artifacts and things that they have there and just learning more than I have never learned before just by visiting the website. So I almost became engulfed with like this hard kind of emotion. Like I wasn't sad necessarily, but it was just like finally. It was a moment in history and it was good trouble, basically. Like for all that the African American community has been through, I believe that this was the perfect moment to rejoice, and not necessarily because of the struggle, but just to show appreciation and to say, hey, you're not forgotten about. Hey, you know, we still love you. We've been working on this. Obviously, it didn't happen overnight. And I was actually surprised to even learn the history that George Bush actually decided that we were going, like at least cleared the way for this museum to come to term. So that was interesting for me. And I was grateful to him in that moment, which surprised me.
Right. Well, what's really interesting, and I was reading a little bit about it, is the fact that they have been talking about a museum of African American culture since 1915.
Yeah.
This is something they've been talking about for a very long time. I had no clue. I was like, really?
I mean, I thought the 13 years it took from this to go, like, really become a real thing was a long time. I didn't know this was like a century in the making. Right.
And yeah, so they started in 1915 having this conversation. It wasn't until the 1970s that they really got into a conversation. And then in 1988, they kind of paused a little bit through the Reagan years. Talked a little bit more about Black people in the Bush years. 1988 came around, and then obviously, so they started that legislation during first President Bush, and then ended it with his son. So clearly, that's a conversation that the Bushes have been trying to surprisingly push on Congress to make it happen.
Yeah, because I think in 50 years from now, they're going to be like, oh, this happened because they had their first Black president. People are not going to know or really think about that this was long in the making before him.
But man, what a great time for it to actually be finished, because he's almost done with his term, and it could have opened with the new president in office. So for it to open while we have our first Black president, it was just like a thank you gift almost.
Right. And this museum has about 33,000 different pieces in it.
36,000.
Yeah. So a lot of pieces. Obviously, it's going to grow over time. It reminds me a little bit of the Civil Rights Museum in Birmingham. I don't know if you guys have been there, but it's amazing. I think this one has like the glass casket for that Emmett Till had, some of the utensils that Harriet Tubman used in it. So I think that I guess when I go back to DC, I'm going to be making a little stop.
Yeah, I was bummed that it wasn't open yet when I was there earlier this year.
That when you go back to DC, you're going to try to go, but the tickets for this year have been completely closed because the museum is free. So to get those tickets in order to go, they have completely stopped tickets
Order.
distribution for the rest of this year, and it's still pending from January 2017. So I'm just like,
Every black person in America is headed to
right.
DC right
I'm like,
now.
how did I not know to just be there, like clicking?
We didn't get the memo
At all.
We didn't. We were not invited. Unfortunately, we did not get that BHL press pass.
Right.
Unfortunate.
So
It's
upset.
unfortunate. So if you head out to DC, just make sure you check out the Smithsonian African American Museum, the Smithsonian African American Culture Museum, which is on the National Mall, which is close to the MLK monument as well. So I also want to pull up another photo. I don't know if it got pulled up, but there was a really great photo of Michelle Obama hugging President Bush. A lot of people were, had their opinions on it, like, why would she hug President Bush? And blah, blah, blah. I'm like, she likes him.
I mean, she doesn't hate him.
Right,
I don't
what do
understand.
you think? Why would you think that? But that just testament to the first lady, because she's always hugging people. It always looks really genuine from her. Like,
You know what photo I would have wished we pulled up? There was I can't remember her name, and I'm so sorry that I'm drawing a blank. The elder woman, she's like 100 and something years old. She actually danced with the Obamas in the office.
I remember her.
And when they opened the museum, President Obama and First Lady Michelle, they had her ring the Bell of Freedom as the way for them to intro. So for her to be 100 plus years old and to have that moment to like ring the bell to open for the grand opening of the museum,
amazing.
I think that's what made me kind of get emotional. Now that I think about it, that was the very moment, because just imagine her life,
right.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, ring that bell in DC if you get there. I'll definitely get out there. Next, last week, President Obama vetoed the 9/11 bill. This was the bill that allowed 9/11 families and family members of victims sue the Saudi government. Mm-hmm. Now, what do you guys think about A, the veto, and B, the bill itself?
When we had that episode when we were remembering 9/11, we brought up, B and I, we brought up this bill. Mm-hmm. And we mentioned that President Obama might veto it just because, and I mentioned on the show that Saudi Arabia is still friends with us in the Middle East. They still have some kind of acquaintance, and we are allies.
We sell them weapons. Yeah, we're certainly friends.
They give us oil. We sell them weapons. We are very good friends.
We're some kind of allies. So I kind of predicted that he may veto it. So it didn't come as a surprise to me when news broke that he actually said, the bill isn't going to pass.
I thought that it was not going to pass. Well, I feel like the children, really want something, and the adult has to be like, now, I know candy for dinner sounds great, but, we can't do this. I mean, this is obviously a very different thing, and it's a very serious thing. But the problem with allowing 9/11 victims and their families to sue a foreign government is that other foreign governments can then turn around and sue us for things that they believe are terrorist acts. So it opens Pandora's box of litigation. If you thought America was litigious, you were about to make the whole world litigious, and it would crumble our relationships with countries like Saudi Arabia. I'm not sure how well. I'm going to keep my mouth shut on that, anyways. But it's not a good move, I think, for the United States. And I think most people, citizens, and it seems like the legislature doesn't know or remember how many times we've gone into other countries. And for whatever reason, whether it was a noble cause or we thought we were there to do good, we have killed innocent people. And now we're going to be sued for that from, how many countries? There's a lot of countries that we've been involved with where that's been our behavior.
So were you surprised at how many Democrats in the House signed on to this bill? It seems like there are certain bills that the Democrats seem to be at odds with the president on. Democrats were, in favor of this bill. President Obama was not. President Obama was in favor of TPP. Democrats in the House and Senate are not.
We're not.
So are you surprised at where they are right now?
I think this has more to do with the fact that it would almost seem unpatriotic and that you are disrespecting.
So it's an election year vote.
And that and almost more, I hate to say it, like emotional or goodwill, or it I mean, it's a little bit like voting for the Iraq War. You just want a sense of justice, and this is the option on the table to invade Iraq because they must have had something to do with this. Let's go and do it. And now we know years later, looking back, that wasn't the right thing to do. And I think this would be like that too. You emotionally want to say, yes, now that we know Saudi Arabia had something to do with this, we want to sue them, we want justice, and we want, a feeling like they're not getting away with this. But you look back in a few years, if we were to go down this road, and it would probably be a regret. But for right now, there's just so much passion behind it that I think that's what's driving it.
I definitely said this before, and I'll say it again. It is absolutely an emotional bill almost, because the country, the United States of America, was affected by 9/11, and in one way or a form, our congressmen and women, they want to find ways to honor the victims and their families and make sure that we are remembering them and try to bring justice to the situation. So at the end of the day, they want to sue Saudi Arabia because they feel like this will bring justice to the family and to the victims. Now, although that may bring some kind of closure, some kind of, okay, we got them back, for the country, it just won't be a good thing. It will be disastrous. There's going to be somebody is going to, if the bill were to pass, someone would come back and attack us, or it just would be this whole whirlwind of craziness, and we don't want that. So it absolutely is an emotional decision. I do wish we can find ways to almost bring justice to the victims and the family, because we know that certain people had involvement with it. But we're spread so thin, and I say we as in the USA, we're spread so thin within the world that it's almost hard to make any move without setting off one of those fire pits. You know what I mean?
Also, just if we look at this legally, I believe that what we know is that Saudi Arabia was like an ally to these guys. We don't know even how involved they were in the planning and all. It's just that there is for sure a relationship, and it might be tangential, like so much so that if we held this kind of lawsuit in the United States against a company or something, the connection would be too tenuous to cause any liability. So I think that the evidence that we have that connects Saudi Arabia is real and true, but perhaps too tenuous. And I don't know, what standard of law, because if we apply our own standard of law, I don't think that the 9/11 victims would even win.
Right. And so my other question, though, is what I find very ironic is the fact that Republicans sat on their hands on the 9/11 first responders bill for a few years, and yet now after we hear, or they get the declassified 9/11 report, that kind of the paragraphs that talked about Saudi Arabia, now they want to act very swiftly on something that might, as you said, in the long term, not really help these families out, but something very immediate like the 9/11 first responders bill certainly could have had an immediate effect on a lot of those families.
I hate to reduce them to this, but say this 9/11 bill is money in, the first responders bill is money out.
Right.
And I think it comes down
But money
to
into who, though?
Money into the families.
Right. No, but, right.
And the other one, the first responders bill, is money from the federal government out to families, which Republicans don't like that. They'll, that's I don't know, they're going to.
And I'm wondering who, and I don't know, I didn't read too much into the bill, but I'm wondering what court they would take the Saudi government to. Like, do they take them to international court? Who defends these families?
That's why it sounds good.
The Attorney General? It's like, what federal prosecutor is going to be taking this to the international court?
This is what the disappointment becomes. The disappointment becomes that now that Obama has officially vetoed the bill, he's going to be looked at as the bad guy, as the almost dad in the relationship. You know how your dad's always like saying no because he had to make the mature decision. So it's almost like because this was such an emotional or passion-driven bill, it's almost like now maybe the victims and maybe their families are going to be like, we could have sued them, we could have had money, and you said no, you stopped us from getting justice, you stopped this from happening. So that's where the disappointment becomes when someone has to step in. Obviously, the commander-in-chief has to step in and, either vote for the bill or kick it out. He's going to be looked at as the one who didn't help us bring justice, the one who was working against us.
Yeah, I'm looking at President Obama's veto measure. It's very long.
It all had to do with, the relationship and not wanting to do further harm to allies in the Middle East who could help us potentially fight ISIS, rather than alienating the few friends we do have in the region.
And I mean, it takes 2/3 of the House to override a veto. I think, obviously, since it was almost unanimous. Actually, I think that bill passed on a voice vote. So I don't know.
It's a little hairy.
It's a little. So I don't know, like, how loud. When we saw the sit-in, there were loud people. There were more voices than there were, or it was more vocal in there for the shut down what was happening than it was for the folks actually doing the sit-in. So, or at least that's the opinion of the chair. So I don't know how many Democrats are actually going to vote for the override. So that'll be very interesting to see. And I don't think that going into what's really interesting is that the Trump campaign really hasn't jumped on this at all. They haven't really talked about it. Probably because they know Secretary Clinton has a better track record with 9/11 families in New York City than Trump does. But I don't think that they want to go into that fight with the White House.
Yeah, I don't think that we're going to hear about this from them. And I also don't know if the override is going to gain much momentum in light of the fact that there's like a potential looming, shutdown in the works. And so this might get sort of drowned out.
Well, I hope that there isn't an override. I hope that, at least the veto of the bill is respected, although it may not be, because for the upcoming election and for this to be happening, meaning this is just going to fall on, the next president. We obviously don't want Trump to touch it at all, because especially when it comes to relationships with our allies, we just don't want that to happen. So I think that we kind of need it to be at a standstill, at least for now. So even if they override it, obviously it's going to take some time, but logically, I just don't, outside of the families getting justice, and I want them to get justice, and I can't express that enough, I feel like the bill, if this passed, would do more harm than good.
Yeah.
Right. So we'll definitely see what happens over the next few weeks. I don't think that the Speaker of the House wants to go into a shutdown with the White House either during an election year, because Republicans always look bad during shutdown time because the White House does it so well. They never win shutdown modes, and I don't think they want the Republican Congress already has like a 3% approval rating, so I don't think that they want going into an election year to deal with the shutdown. So we'll see. We'll talk about that at some point soon when it actually comes to fruition. Hopefully not. The other part of last week that happened that really surprised a lot of people, I don't know if it surprised you guys, was the fact that Ted Cruz endorsed Donald Trump last week, but he only did it in a Facebook post, so we haven't actually seen Ted Cruz out in person.
I did hear him talk to Glenn Beck about it, who kind of skewered him, roasted him, insert cooking analogy here, but really cooked him till he was done.
Right.
And really, really pressed him about, why did you change your mind? And it was all having to do with Hillary and the Supreme Court. That's when he kept saying why. That's where Ted Cruz went.
Because he's a constitutional lawyer, Ted Cruz? Or
yeah, so
like that?
he wants like a Scalia type of justice.
Right.
But Glenn Beck said, but you knew that at the convention. You knew that before. What's changed now?
Right.
What's changed now?
Right.
And what he said has changed now is that Trump came out with a list of 21 prospective justices that he would nominate
including
to the court.
Mike Lee. I know his friend Mike Lee.
Mike Lee was the number one person
Senator
on that
Mike
list.
Lee from Utah.
And Glenn Beck's, but you kind of put Mike Lee out there because Mike Lee hasn't even endorsed Trump. So this is
right.
But Ted Cruz sort of stuck to his gun that it was this list and Trump's promise to nominate somebody from this list of 21 people. And Glenn Beck's like, and what makes you think that he'll actually stick to that?
Right.
To which Ted Cruz is like, you don't know if anybody will stick to anything. Okay, maybe kind of, except we're talking about Trump here. And the other funny thing about this is it's just harping so much that the Second Amendment is on the line, that a liberal judge wants to overturn or...
They forget that there are not 8 other people in the court.
We're just gonna pluck out the Second Amendment.
Right.
That's what anybody wants. That's not how it works. There is no move to overturn the Second Amendment
Right.
or deconstitutionalize the right to bear arms. Sure, the Heller case, which makes the individual right to have a gun, would perhaps be at play, but it's not like the justices sit there and just talk amongst themselves and decide that this is the issue that they want to take up. There has to be a real, live, active controversy that makes its way up to the court. And then the court can decide whether they want to hear it, and then if they hear it, whether they want to overturn or follow precedents. But the Supreme Court is generally one to follow precedents. And so to just completely go against it is probably unlikely. They would maybe niche it down further to create maybe some expectations of, in these scenarios, to break it down. So it might make the Heller decision a little bit more nuanced, but I don't think that, in 4 years or 8 years, we're going to have no Second Amendment.
Right.
But that's what it all came down to for Ted Cruz, and I thought it was a wimpy answer.
I think that he may have had some kind of private conversation with Donald Trump and his team, and they tried to hash out whatever differences that they've had prior to him coming out and endorsing.
It was actually Mike Pence that reached out to Ted Cruz, and according to this conversation that I heard on Glenn Beck, that he said,
Hold on, time out. I'm just surprised that you listen to Glenn Beck. First of all,
I.
How did your radio station
No, not
switch
Glenn
over
Beck
to Glenn
conversation.
Beck?
No. I'm almost insulted that you believe that. No, it was when I knew that we were going to cover this story. I looked it up, and one of the first things to come on was it was like I don't know, it wasn't even quite 30 minutes clip that don't worry, I was doing many other more important things, but I was just listening to it so I would have something to say.
I just wanted to know.
Here.
I was like, wow, I'm impressed that you listened to Glenn Beck.
No. Don't. Well, no. I hope you're impressed by other things, not my willingness to listen to Glenn Beck.
No, I've always impressed by other things. But here's my question. So I really wish that we were talking about the 9/11 bill. I really wish that there would be speaking of Second Amendment, that there'd be a class action lawsuit. If they could do that for another country and they pass that, why can't families do a class action lawsuit against the NRA?
Ooh. Well,
you know what I mean? Like, if I would, that opens a whole door to broad litigation. You could, okay, you got 9/11 families. How about the NRA? How about you just take a bunch of families and you go after the NRA?
Well, the lawyer in me says, the causal connection is not quite there, but
right.
I appreciate the spirit of it, and I would
I'm just throwing that out there.
Be along with it. But I'm so sorry, I interrupted you when you said that he must have reached out. It was Pence who reached out.
Mm-hmm.
So Pence is the one who kind of brought Ted Cruz on board, which makes it not surprising because honestly, that's his job. That's the whole reason that he is vice president or,
right.
the candidate for Trump. Yeah. That's what he's supposed to do. What becomes a mockery, which is unfortunate, is we've talked about following this election from the beginning, the flip-flopping from the Republican Party. It's I'm for you, I'm against you, I'm for you, I'm against you. I didn't say that. No, you're wrong. It's always the back and forth and the wish-washiness. So it's unfortunate that now that Ted Cruz has officially endorsed Trump, after he was fighting so hard, it was like you were very passionate, more passionate than some Hillary supporters.
Vote your conscience.
He tried to say that he hasn't changed his message. Actually, it was interesting. He almost admitted to plagiarizing speeches from Reagan and Carter. He said, my convention speech was much inspired by them. I think he almost said word for word. He took the language of those speeches for the convention. He wanted it to be sort of in their spirit, and that he wasn't saying don't vote for Donald Trump, but he was saying to Donald Trump, you got to come make it so that I can vote for you because I'm voting for my conscience.
That's not what he said, but okay.
Right.
But Ted Cruz has a history of lifting very inspiring passages from things. Remember when he was in the gymnasium and he did the basketball and he did this movie speech.
I don't watch Ted Cruz as much as apparently you do.
Well, I don't listen to Glenn Beck apparently as much as you do. No, but he did he lifted some passage for some movie. I can't even remember what it was, but it was straight from the movie, and everybody was like, "But you got that from it was in Indiana." It was "But you got that from a Hoosier movie." It was a movie.
Yeah.
So if somebody knows what it is, find it and talk to me, put it in the chat or something. But
Something else that I thought was kind of funny. Glenn Beck totally called Cruz out for this, even like skipped going to a commercial, and he's like, I don't care that I'm about to lose 20 grand. I'm asking you this question. I have never gone on a Trump website and put in my email address, but somehow they started emailing me, and the only person who I gave my email to was you. So did you sell him my email?
Oh, because they have the email addresses. They rented the email addresses.
That's exactly what he said. Well, I did not sell it. Much like you sell ads on your radio show as a source of income, this is business, and we rent out our list to other candidates. I mean, he gave this real. So the answer was yes.
Yes.
Well, in the chat room, Omat Oshan, thanks for watching, has said, Ted Cruz has lost all credibility with mainstream Republicans for not endorsing Trump at the RNC. Now he will lose his core support from hardline conservatives. I can see him being primaried in 2018, which I do know that, there was, I think Ted Cruz's decision was less about anything that he ever said, and not even about that conversation that he had with Mike Pence, but about his a potential primary opponent in 2018, and Reince Priebus coming out a few weeks earlier saying that anybody who signed the pledge, who wasn't going to support the nominee, is going to have a harder time running for president in 2020. Now, if through all of this primary rigging talk that we had this year, that was the most pointed rigging conversation on actual national television that we've ever heard.
Yeah.
So if that does not lift the ears of Republicans, and perk them ears up, I don't know what's going to, because Reince basically said, listen, if you don't jump on board, we're going to make it harder for you to run for president, which is not good. I don't know what else to say about that. But, listen, I don't think that Ted Cruz is going to be out stumping for Donald Trump anytime soon. I don't think that...
No, he still talked like he doesn't really like him. His
maybe he thinks he's going to get nominated for the Supreme Court.
He thinks he's going to get a job. He's trying to play friend so that he can secure some kind of spot somewhere, and it's kind of pathetic.
You know who really thinks they're going to get a job, though? Michael, I believe
Chris
that
Christie.
Not Chris Christie's not getting a job other than like body man. Like he's going to be the Charlie Young to Donald Trump's to a Jed Bartlett Donald Trump presidency. But I think that Michael Flynn, the General Flynn, will be something like Homeland Security Secretary, or he can't be Joint Chiefs because he can't go back. I mean, he could be recommissioned back in uniform, but I think Michael Flynn would be something. I think Rudy Giuliani is really trying to position himself for Attorney General.
Chief Stop and Frisker?
Yeah, Attorney General is what Rudy Giuliani wants, and I think that that will be very scary if Rudy Giuliani becomes Attorney General.
I think I would cry.
To go from Eric Holder to Loretta Lynch to Giuliani?
Disastrous.
Cringe.
Yeah.
Disastrous.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's enough talking about Ted Cruz. I don't think I've talked about Ted Cruz like at this entire election cycle. So, good on Ted Cruz. So let's move on to debate special. I wish we had that music again, just so we could like transition into like debate mode.
You can do it.
I could do it. Dun, 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 dun. That's perfect. That Rachel Maddow music. So listen, last night debate. Let's talk about it. What did you guys think? Let's go with initial thoughts of the debate.
Frustration.
Frustration in what?
In both candidates almost, because I know that there are people who really tuned in to kind of hear their thoughts and hear, how they were going to answer some of these questions, but we couldn't really get some of the straight answers because it was such a back and forth. It was such a child yelling match, and I became frustrated. Although it was funny, it was still like I'm laughing, but this is not a laughing matter.
Yeah.
So I was frustrated a little bit. Toward the end, obviously the frustration went away, a bit. But overall, judging from the beginning to the end, I was a bit frustrated.
I was hoping that because of the tone at which and speed at which Donald Trump speaks, that it would sort of force Hillary to speak more naturally rather than give a long political answer, that would just sort of stick out like a sore thumb compared to Trump's straightforward talk. And sometimes she did, but she still stuck to her classic Hillary approach. And it's so frustrating. I guess I shared, because there would be easy ways to articulate things in just regular, normal English, not politician tongue, that could have gotten the message across better. But I was glad that Trump was himself, and that he didn't put on a classy act, so that people would say, "Oh, see, he's not so bad after all." So I was, I guess, in some ways pleasantly surprised by him, because it's like I already think of him as a con man, and I thought he was going to hide again who he was, but it's like he's an open con man. He's like an authentic con man,
Right.
which I guess maybe is the only level of respect that I have for him. But I thought it was blah on the issues. For me, both of them, neither of them said anything that I was really taken aback by and was like so inspired. And I mean, probably the worst example was like the race relations issue. It's like, how are you going to heal the racial divide? And Hillary was like, working together with communities, community policing, police training, with, yes, I believe, but that shouldn't be like the go-to thing. And then Trump is like, well, here's the Fraternal Order of Police supports me, ICE supports me, their union does. I got law enforcement on my side. I'm a law and order kind of guy. Everybody's going to respect the law, and that's it. Everybody's going to shut up, and we're going to be searched, frisked, and that's how we're going to heal the divide of America. It was like, really? Are you kidding me? And I said this last night on Trump versus Hillary, but that was a perfect place for either one of them to say something like, how about we end the war on drugs? That's what's at the root of a lot of the criminalization of the Latino and Black communities in this country. Let's do something different. That hasn't worked. We've got mass incarceration as a result of it. We've got people suspicious of each other, cops wasting time on silly marijuana arrests when they have bigger fish to fry. But no, nothing like that from either one of them.
So in terms of policy, and we'll get to the actual policy in a second, but in terms of how long the primary is, do you find that once we've been talking about this election for almost 2 years,
Yeah,
but it's only been like a year and a half so far. But do you think by the time we get to the presidential debates, you can only, because you've heard the policy so many times, so many different ways, there's no other way to say it other than hearing, because you're not going to hear anything new. So just for example, what you were talking about with Hillary Clinton, there's nothing new that she can say. So of course she's going to revert back to something that she's already said during the primary, that she's already been, in convention and then post convention, all the policies after that. So I don't know if you're ever going to get
Except that I would think normally yes. And if she was winning in the polls by a landslide, just stick to the Hillary, script and you're good. But when it is supposedly as close as it is, I would think that maybe she would come out with something that would make her, stand out, maybe access millennials better, say something that might actually get eyes on, like, what she's willing, she's saying that what she's saying is not connecting with people, and she is going to take on the position of what Americans want.
Well, and I want to
I
touch
have a
on
point on that I want to touch on.
Okay, I just want to make just a quick point on style, because I think when you just presidential candidates in general, especially when you got the main one, the first one, which is always behind the podium, then you got the one sitting down, and I'm hoping that we see a different side of Secretary Clinton when she's sitting down, because every time that she is sat down, she's a different person. If you remember her debate with
let's not say that she needs to sit down in order to have stamina.
No, what I'm saying is that she's more relaxed, more relaxed in a conversational mode than somebody standing behind a podium.
But yeah, she still sounded like that with Matt Lauer.
Well, the commander-in-chief form is a little bit different, because I think that you're also having to prove that you're a woman who can command the military. So you're having to be. I think that there's just I think that we have to take a look at the situation and say, okay, first presidential debate behind a podium. First forum talking about national security. That's something that she takes very seriously, and that she believes that the American people should take seriously, and that Donald Trump doesn't take seriously. And third, like I said, when we've seen her her debate with President Obama in 2008, she was a little bit more relaxed then. So I'm just saying, I hope we get to that point where she can feel a little bit more relaxed, where she doesn't have to be stuffy. She's not standing on her, where she's not having to feel like. There was a point last night where Donald Trump, you ever had those kids and they really want to look really serious, and they just kind of do this.
Yes.
And they look really
Meanwhile,
serious.
she was doing her little shimmy.
Oh, she did a little shimmy, yeah. But Donald Trump did that a couple times. Like he was really trying hard to pull out, to bring the serious Donald Trump out. And then you were like, you just look like that kid that just really wanted to look serious and get mad and
or constipated.
On more than one occasion. Here's the thing. I kind of agree with you a little bit. I didn't need Hillary to tell me anything differently than what she's already been saying about policy. We've gone to her website. We've done the research. We know where she stands. We kind of know the direction that she wants to go. That's not what I was looking for in her. I think for me, it was more so delivery. She did feel a little tense. It was a bit more restricted, but being there, and whether it was the first debate or it's the third debate, for her to be going to be in a debate with Donald Trump and him not allowing her to get out those points, it was almost like she was playing his game. Like she was feeding into his game, and I personally wanted her to just be like, you know what? Let's cut the drama. Let's cut this. Let's cut that. This is what the question is. This is what I'm gonna do. This is how I'm gonna do it. You can say, you can say what you want. And I understand that there's a certain format and there's a certain way that it's supposed to go. But I think when the race is at stake and when the polls are so close, according to the media, then we kind of need that from her, at least for the millennials.
I mean, it just kills me that millennials need some like prodding to vote for something. Like it's like get a clue, But here's the thing.
Hang on a sec. Millennials are engaged, but just are not in love with Hillary.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying like she, I think that everybody, like, she wasn't plain spoken at the convention. She hasn't been plain spoken all year. That's not her style. She knows that. She knows the weakness. Like, you're not going to change a person just because you want people to you want to be likable. I don't change my style of my tone because people don't, because people want to feel some way. Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
It's not about liking her, though, because even for
But that's what it is.
Because
it's about connecting with
her.
It's
Right.
about understanding the language that she
Right,
speaks.
but I think that you can connect more with policy and what is actually what is actually. I'm saying I think that with when you have a candidate like Barack Obama, and we're just so used to Barack Obama and his really plain spoken but really like professorial, like some people don't like his professorial side. They think he's a little. I mean, I heard after the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation dinner that Obama was too professorial and talking down to black people. Like, it's like you're never going to win the style argument because people are not going to like the delivery.
But what's going on here is that they want a candidate who speaks their language. Bernie spoke the language of millennials. Trump speaks the language of deplorables.
Yes.
And those who just really hate Hillary. So that's the problem, is that we as a country are over the political nice talk.
Absolutely.
It just doesn't work for us anymore.
And I think that at a certain point, yes, I think that you do. I mean, if you're in the Situation Room, or if you're in you're dealing with world leaders, that talk you're gonna have to change it to presidential mode. And you're gonna have to have those fireside chats with the American people at some point. So I mean, I think that at a certain point, like I said, I think at a certain point Hillary understands her weaknesses, and it's just common knowledge that, as Omat said, it's just common knowledge that her style's not going to change anytime soon.
From a personal standpoint, there were moments during the debate last night where I was impressed, where she did kind of drop it, and she was like, and she gave me,
she tried,
and she gave, shimmy. And she gave me very briefly, what it was. She definitely did try. So she had those moments. So it's not about whether she has it in her or she doesn't. I think that she has been in this field for a long time, for 30 plus years. This is what she is used to. This is how she is used to going. So I feel like for her to be on the stage and to be at the podium at this point, it's almost like, her script is programmed into her. So it takes a lot to kind of break that script, and I get that. But I was impressed last night because she did have moments where I know that it's there. It's not that it's not there. It's not that she's not capable. It's just that show it to us. Bring us into it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Obviously, I disagree because I just don't get into
'Cause she
my.
speaks your language,
Well, I just
though.
don't get into my feelings on who I like, how somebody makes me feel, and
It's
I'm
not
voting for
feeling,
president.
it's
and
language that
connecting.
resonates.
Like, I mean, but listen, I that's just my personal feeling. I mean, I'm from a military family, so my personal delivery. You tell me exactly what you're going to do. That's all I care about. The three different topics from last night: achieving prosperity, America's direction, national security. What area of those three did you think that either were stronger or better on than the other candidate?
Jobs, I don't believe that Trump doesn't understand technology, so all these jobs that he thinks he's bringing back are going to be non-existent. And Hillary didn't say anything, or specifically, she was given the first opportunity and she sort of went into some general income inequality, which was, I like to talk about that, but that was sort of just a key word that was like thrown out there, and then nothing really substantial on jobs. So neither of them really did it for me there.
And I think that's where the frustration came from me. So when it came down to actually getting down to their strong points, the fact that I couldn't necessarily say, oh my gosh, she completely embodied that question, or oh my gosh, he handed it to her. The fact that I couldn't walk away saying that's where the frustration came from. When it came down to Donald, every time he got a question, he almost like, he took us around the world before he even touched on a word that was in the question. So it was just like, okay,
how political like politician-esque of him. He's getting the game down.
Yeah.
right. Like, and he took us on a whole trip, and I just felt like I got nothing. I got a lot of stories. I got a lot of, you did this, you didn't do that, you were wrong for this. My dad
built
gave me
jobs
this
and-
loan.
yeah.
I'm gonna build this. Where I got a lot of that. So I kind of got a history of him a little bit, opposed to how are you going to, bring us more jobs? Like, how are you actually going to do it?
The whole, tax cuts and the trickle down theory thing. It was
You mean
like
trumped up trickle down? Is that what the term is?
I mean, and so that was a great little term by Hillary to kind of knock him, and anybody that's been alive in the last 30 years would hopefully see that trickle down economics does not work. But then she didn't offer something inspiring as an alternative.
Right. And we talked a little bit about format last night, and just in terms of, was 2 minutes too long? Was a minute too long? Like, how do you get all of what you need to say in 2 minutes, even though you've been prepped for certain?
2 minutes is a long
I mean,
time.
it is a long time. I mean, we do a 45-minute show. It's not. 45 minutes is not a long time.
Goes by
it goes by
in a
very quickly.
blink.
So when you're trying to get all your policy points down, I can really only talk about Hillary because Donald Trump really didn't say anything last night. Here's the thing. I thought he was very strong in a Republican talking point way on the economy. I mean, he hit all of the red meat that a Republican would normally say during a debate. And then just on economy, that's a difference of philosophy. Like, if we were just having an economic conversation, it would be Republicans absolutely believe what Donald Trump is saying. Democrats don't believe in trickle-down economics and know that from an economic standpoint it doesn't work. So it's just, who do you believe
And then
has the
Hillary
right
was
way?
saying like advanced manufacturing. What does that even mean? If there was some actual, yes, infrastructure, okay, green jobs, yes.
So how would you explain that then? If she's saying advanced manufacturing, what would you expect her to say?
Well, it would have been really smart if she said, listen, all those jobs that have been shipped abroad are not ever going to come back here, because if those jobs come back here, they'll likely be those skills will be done by robots and computers.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we do need is an entire workforce that knows how to operate, maintain, build, create those robots and the computer software that goes behind them and maintenance, That would have been the smart thing, because then it would have totally crushed Trump's thing about we're going to prevent them from taking jobs away and bringing them back. When no, that's silly. That's child's play. What we're going to do is be the computer, robot technology leaders of the world.
Right. And I always find that Hillary Clinton, because she talks, policy wonk. She doesn't know how to explain policy very well without making it an elongated paragraphs and paragraphs of talking like that. She can really, to pare it down, so she can only really talk about the buzzwords in the policy that she wants to do.
So then you're just left with advanced manufacturing, green
Right.
jobs,
But
and infrastructure.
Right. So I think that
Woohoo.
hopefully they're prepping her. I think what she really wanted to do. I mean, she didn't really talk that much during this debate.
I was going to say, so getting
she was interrupted 70 times. So I
getting
don't
to
think
the 2-minute mark, I don't think it was a lot of time, but I think it was just enough time. The problem then became where it was a lot of talking over. So
Right.
they couldn't actually get their fullness of their answer, whatever prepped answer they had with whatever key points. They couldn't get that out because it was being interrupted. It was being talked over, and everybody wanted an extra 20 seconds that turned into another 2 minutes. So that's what the debate became. So when it was time for them to actually listen, let me know exactly what are you going to do, she couldn't do that. I can say that she couldn't do that, and I was waiting for it. I was waiting to get it. But do we blame Trump for that, or do we blame the moderator?
I don't really blame Lester Holt for anything. I think that he's really stayed out of most of the conversation. Other than, I feel like Lester Holt he didn't want to fact check anything, or at least attempt to, but he really couldn't help himself as a journalist to be like, actually, that's unconstitutional. Actually, that's you voted for that. So I just felt like he couldn't help it.
He would have been murdered, like
which
Matt Lauer was.
Well, like they are doing right now. Like the campaign is trying to pretend like Lester Holt was the second coming of the devil.
But as the facilitator, I just felt like he was completely too passive, especially with such a small amount of time. We did not have a lot of time with them last night. So when it was time, when he did speak up in his passive way, he was like, it's time to move on. He was being bombarded over, by the other candidate. And to me, at least watching the debate, I'm listening to Trump up there saying, how is he going to fix the race issue, law and order, and everything like
Stop
that?
and frisk.
But you're not even giving order during the debate. You
Right.
can't even follow the law and order of the debate.
Right.
So that was frustrating
That's
to me.
actually a
That's
really
funny.
good point, that he is sort of his own law and order in his own
Right.
mind, but he agreed to the rules, and you're right, he didn't stick to them at all.
Right.
And-
So the time.
And it goes back to
woo.
something that we always talk about. There were a lot of, and that goes to America's direction. He talked a lot about law and order, but we also know, just based on what he was saying from last night, that he has no concept of how to follow the rules himself. Not just during the debate. I'm talking about tax law.
Well, he would say that he followed the law. It would be more appropriate to say he exploited the
The
law
law.
and the people, and that was actually a theme overall of the night. Was I am a terrible American because I'm an
And you
awesome
should be too,
businessman.
right.
Yeah, and then he said that was smart. That was not. No.
He said that was smart, and then went into the spin room right after and said, "I've never said that."
He
Yeah,
did.
he did say that. He said that. So predictions for what do you want? The next debate's in Virginia or somewhere. Maybe it's somewhere.
Well, next week is the
Next week is
VP.
vice presidential debate.
Yeah.
I didn't want to get to that, but the next presidential debate is in a couple weeks. What do you want to see from Trump?
Wow, that I don't know why I'm so surprised, so caught off guard. Like, what do I want to see?
What do you want to see differently from Trump? What does he need to do differently?
This is what I'm hoping.
I'm asking that as a fair question.
This is what I'm hoping.
It's so crazy. I can't even think of the first thing that would. I'm sorry, Mexicans. I don't believe you're criminals or rapists.
What can he do?
The Gold Star family. I'm such a douche. Really, I meant no disrespect. I was off of my meds. I really don't know how to answer that with any straight face.
Here's the thing. With my answer for that, I feel like it's completely unrealistic. I can't say, I would like him to stop pointing the finger at himself, because that's what stop pointing the finger at everyone else and, answer the question for himself, because that's what he does. So I feel like everything that I would want him to do, it's not in his brand. It's not who he is as the presidential candidate. So it's almost like I would be asking for entirely too much to ask him to do a full sentence.
Hillary Clinton.
I want her to sound like a normal person, to kind of just shake off, shimmy off the whole, lay everything out as a whole long political story, and just when a question is asked, just yes or no, and then the why, rather than the whole background and this and it's complicated and just get to it and then give your answer, the lengthier explanation after. But when she gives the whole political answer, she sounds evasive, and Americans are annoyed by that. And I am very annoyed by Trump now taking his weakest traits and trying to market them as
To a
his strongest.
Strong?
Thank you. I'm inventing words now. I was
in the Trump glossary.
gonna say it's like inventing words like bigly, except I
And
discovered that it's a real
word.
word.
Or braggadocious.
Well, that one I knew is a real word, and he was trying. I'm not being braggadocious. That is hilarious. I guess I am expecting stand-up comedy from Trump.
Hillary Clinton?
For the next debate, I'm hoping that all the child play is done. As far as not just with her, not just with her. At least with the debate, I'm hoping that we can get more realness out of her. I'm hoping that she can be more straightforward. We already know all of the crap that's been haunting her throughout this election. That's fine. We're not trying to bring that up. We don't need to hear about that anymore. We more so just need a realness of where you're trying to lead the country. Like, just be real with me. Let's not sugarcoat it. Let's not try to, keep both ends. If it's going to piss me off, that's fine, but be real with me.
And be real about where she has fallen short before. Come out and say, I flipped on the TPP because I was an ambassador of the president who supports it, and my job was working for him.
Right.
And so,
and Donald Trump tried to get her to say that last night.
So I think it would have actually been.
So I was going to say that I really want her over the next week, and I said it at work today. I really want her over the next week to focus on trade policy. Because she hasn't done a major speech on trade policy yet, and I really want her to focus that, because that seems to be the sticking point that Republicans are going to try to pit her against Obama on over the next few weeks.
Call herself out.
Yeah, not only from a policy. They're not going to try to exploit it from a policy standpoint. They're going to try to exploit it from a White House standpoint as well. So I really think that she needs to come out and outline her policy plans on trade, so that prepares her for the next debate, because that seems to be the one area where Trump can try to exploit her and Barack Obama at the same time.
I think she would do much better in calling herself out where she.
In this trade policy is
like,
explaining.
Even in like saying, you know what? Yeah, I took private prison money, and you know what? I realized how wrong that was. I gave that back, and now I'm really an advocate for.
Well, I don't think you're going to go. She's not going to come out there and say. She's
that,
not going to come out.
It's okay to be wrong.
If somebody asks her the question, then yes, maybe. But I don't think she should come out like you said last night. Trump should. Nobody should like bring up their weakness unless if she's asked. Yes, I think absolutely she should start to. She talked about their emails, made a mistake. I think every time she's asked about a question like that, hey, listen, here's what happened.
I messed up, but this is where I'm going now.
Right, and here are my Goldman Sachs transcripts.
Right. Of course. Well,
mic drop.
Listen, next week is the vice presidential debate, so make sure you guys are tuning in to that. Mike Pence and Tim Kaine. Tim Kaine, very folksy. Mike Pence, very Republican. So we'll see what happens, and we'll be talking.
Hopefully, we'll stay awake through it.
Hopefully, we'll stay awake through. Hopefully, you guys will stay awake through it. You can follow me at Drexel Heard on Twitter.
You can follow me at Hey It's Lay.
And I'm at Chelsea Galicia.
And make sure you follow the show at BHL Polyculture. Use the hashtag BHLPC. And leave your comments in the comment section. And we will see you all next time.
Bye.
See you later.
Bye.
From producers Maria Menounos, Dario Kristen, Tiana Hobson, Keven Undergaro, and the entire BHL crew, we would like to thank you for supporting Black Hollywood Live, the first online broadcast network dedicated to African American entertainment. For questions and comments, contact us at info@blackhollywoodlive.com. Like us on Facebook, tweet us, or Instagram us at BHL Online. And I'm your BHL announcer, Scipio. Instagram me at Planet Scipio. Thank you for tuning in.
Hollywood Redefined.
The views expressed here are those of the host only and do not necessarily reflect the views of BHL or its owners or principals.